Good morning, good evening, or dead of night, whenever you've decided to start this video. And thank y'all for electing to participate in today's lecture on free and low-cost legal research resources. I'm your host for this class, Professor Hinojosa, and today we're going to learn all we can about the world beyond the prohibitively expensive Wexisburg. That's Westlaw, Lexis, and Bloomberg. So, I'm sure you all have your individual reasons why you decided to take this class on free and low-cost legal resources, but let's start today with why you should care about this stuff in addition to your own reasons. Why is it important to care about free or low-cost legal resources? As I'm sure you've been able to guess, the simple answer is because it's free, or at the very least, low cost. It feels very self-explanatory. But just in case that itself didn't convince you, think about it in these terms. Here in law school La La Land, the school subsidizes your use of the big three databases, Wexisburg, and in exchange, we teach you guys how to use those databases. Or put more succinctly, we teach you guys to rely on those databases so you feel you need them to be able to do legal research. And this isn't some sort of insidious corporate overlord behavior. That's just the reality of the business of legal research. The big three databases want your patronage after you leave law school. They want to leave their mark on you. And that's fair. So let's look a bit closer into how feasible using these after law school actually is. And in order to do that, let's quickly take a look at some of the pricing plans for Westlaw accounts. This top picture here shows what the basic Westlaw Classic plan would be priced at monthly for a single person law firm. Already that number is kind of scary. And this is if you were at your own law firm all by yourself, all by your lonesome. But what if you worked at a small time law firm with 5 to 10 lawyers? Along with all the other expenses that your firm's business manager would be navigating, like salaries, office rent, property taxes, they'd also now have to worry about paying almost $1,000 a month just for Westlaw. Every month. There are apartments in this city cheaper to rent than that plan. Now keep in mind that here in law school, we used the most complete Westlaw package that we can get for you, and that's called Westlaw Precision. But here in these plans, we're looking at the most basic one that Westlaw offers. A law firm of 10 people looking for the most basic form of Westlaw would have to pay at least $900 a month. And that's the rate if we're signing a lease for 3 years that we would be completely locked into for 3 years. Now I've done the math, and that adds up to about $32,500. If we don't want to sign for 3 years, it's even more expensive. And now this is just the pricing plans for Westlaw. Lexis and Bloomberg aren't much better. And in fact, this is pretty par for the course. Are you starting to see what I'm saying? It's not really easy to pay for these services, and especially not if you're in a smaller firm or doing more community-oriented work that doesn't pay as much as big law does. And suddenly, free and low-cost resources start to sound much more appealing. Now, all that being said, as much as we want the world, and more specifically the internet, to be a perfect utopia of factual information, we will ultimately have to be much more careful about the legal research sources that we choose so that we don't end up relying on bad law or completely made up law, like our friends in the Avianca case and all the cases that have come after them that used ChatGPT to research and didn't catch the program completely hallucinating entire rules of law. So before we look at the databases themselves, let's take a second to learn how to evaluate the free and low-cost legal research sources that we find. Now, you may have learned this or a slightly different version of this in your undergraduate courses, but there's a system that we can use across platforms and disciplines to help us evaluate the resources that we find out in the wild. This one is unfortunately called CRAP, but at least it will be hard to forget. Now, CRAP stands for Currency, Relevance, Authority, Accuracy, and Purpose. So let's talk about each of those in a bit of detail before we move on. Now, when we talk about currency, what we're really asking is whether the information is timely or not. And when you're evaluating the currency of a source, you should be asking things like, when was this information published and how long ago was it? You should also be looking into when the information was last updated or revised and whether the information is current or out of date for your topic. Now, this sounds easy in theory while we have the big three databases to compare our free and low-cost resources to, but y'all won't be able to do that after you graduate. So you'll need to find other methods of comparing the currency of a certain website's information. In the case of legal research, you could try looking into government websites or news articles, or you could even look for a secondary source in your local public law library, or ask a law librarian to check whether the information has changed recently. The point is, you have to verify that the information that you found is current and timely and that it hasn't been sitting around untouched for like 30 years. That's how we end up relying on severely outdated law, and we don't want that. Next up is relevance, which is really asking about the importance of the information for your particular needs. Now, when evaluating a source, you should be asking whether the information you found even related to the topic or question you need an answer for. And it's not often that this happens, but sometimes the law shares terms with the sciences, and I blame Latin for this, but I digress. And you may end up finding something that seems to be talking about your Latin law term when in reality it's referencing some obscure science fact that has nothing to do with you. So be wary of that. You should also be asking questions about the source, like who is the intended audience of the source and is it serving your needs as a law professional? There are many resources you'll find that are geared towards the public, but it will be too simplified or elementary for us law professionals that have trained on this information for many, many years. If the information is too simplified, you may miss important key details in your research. Another question to be asking is how many sources you've found so far and how the information you found differs from source to source. Which one is more in-depth and which one is more simplified? And which would you be comfortable citing in practice? And next up, we have authority, which more simply asks, who put this here? Who is the author or the publisher of this work? What are their credentials and what are their motives? When it comes to things like government websites, you can be pretty sure that their motives are likely something to comply with the need for public access to information and assume good objective information. But sometimes you'll come across independent law blogs that may have a different motive for putting together this information. Now, I'm not naming names or pointing fingers, but it's possible a law blog would simplify a complex legal scenario in a blog post to entice people with said problem to call their firm for guidance. Just something to think about. Also, since most of our research is going to be on the computer, be thinking about the URLs you see pop up attached to your sources. Does the URL reveal anything about the author or the source? Is it for commercial use, educational use, nonprofit use? Keep that in mind as you're browsing. Now next, we have accuracy. This questions the reliability, truthfulness, and correctness of the material within our sources. When it comes to legal materials, you'll often find reprints of different codified law, which doesn't allow much wiggle room for lying. But what it does leave is the possibility of typos or accidentally omitted text. When you're evaluating your source, be looking around for signs of typos or sentences that don't quite flow right, as if something is missing. It's possible that in reprinting the information, something critical has been lost. Now, because of this, it's important to check the information you find against other sources, like we said earlier, so you can be sure that you're getting accurate and complete information. And lastly, in this lineup, we have purpose. You want to be asking why this information exists in the context in which you found it. What is its purpose? Is it to teach? Is it to sell? To entertain? And does your source make its own purpose clear? Often when you find a free or low-cost database, it will be run by a group of people with a specific mission in mind. I'll show you one in a little bit. But the point is, it'll be obviously stated that they've put this information online freely for a specific and concise purpose. Now, when you can't find the purpose behind something being available online, it calls into question both the authority and the accuracy of the source. So be on the lookout for that. All in all, despite its unfortunate name, the CRAP test is a really good method for evaluating a free or low-cost legal research resource because it allows us to make sure we're getting updated, relevant, informed, accurate, and objective information about our topic, which is exactly what we need, whether we're looking for a reprint of codified law or some form of secondary explanation of it. Now, although the CRAP test is awesome and will help you find reliable information, you won't have to do that with every single free or low-cost database that you come across. There are a few sites where you won't need the CRAP test to tell you whether you can trust the information within because it's already been vetted by lawyers and scholars before you, and it may even be used on a daily basis. Now, I want to introduce you to two of my favorites today. The first of this I'm going to talk about is a legal research database we currently have access to through the law school that you'll be able to maintain once you become bar certified. It's called FastCase, and it encompasses things like case law, statutes, regulations, court rules, constitutions, and even a couple law review articles here and there. And it's a really nifty source once you get the hang of using it. It's a little difficult, but we'll figure it out together. It works very similar to our Wexisberg databases and can even do some pretty powerful terms and connectors searching if you're into that. We'll get to see it in the demo in a moment, but for now, just take my word for it that it's pretty great. And the second database that I want to show you is Cornell Law School's Legal Information Institute. You may have come across this one already, especially when you were frantically looking for code sections when in the stress of a con law cold call like I did. Even the homepage of this website tells you its mission, that the curators believe everyone should be able to read and understand the laws that govern them. So they do what they can to carry out that vision by uploading everything online, keeping it updated as much as they can. This database mostly has a lot of federal law and codices like the Constitution, the most recent Supreme Court decisions, the U.S. Code, the Code of Federal Regulations, the Federal Rules of Procedure, and tons of other stuff. The database also has a legal encyclopedia and a legal dictionary, offering thousands of definitions and brief explanations of legal terms of art divided by subject matter. But these are just two of my favorites, and the ones you'll most likely be encountering with. There are, however, tons more. If we had the time, I'd gladly go through every single one and show y'all how to use each one, but alas, we don't have that kind of time, nor do I have that kind of patience for one single video. But never fear. We have a beautifully organized handout of free online legal resources available on the Blackboard page you found this video on. I implore y'all to go check them out and spend some time with each site so you know exactly what you can find there. But as for FastCase and the Legal Information Institute, I'm going to do a quick demonstration to help y'all get started navigating these databases. And after that, We're going to move into the in-class exercise and the review. So I'll see you all on Zoom in just a second. Okay, welcome to Zoom and specifically the demo and in-class exercise portion of today's lecture. But before we do any of that, the first thing that I wanted to show you is where you can find the handout that I was talking about earlier in the lecture. So if you're on the Blackboard page or the Canva page, because I know we're switching over to Canva pretty soon, they're going to be in basically the same spot. And right where you found this video, all you're going to do is scroll down a little bit to find the handout. And you're just going to click on that and it'll open either on the screen or it will download for you, which is great. But basically, all this is an aggregation of a bunch of free online legal resources that we've put together for you guys. So today, we're only really going to be focusing on the Legal Information Institute and on Fast Case by VLEX, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I wanted you to know that there are many others that you can use in your research. For example, we've got congress.gov and the Legislative Reference Library of Texas. Those are great if you're doing any sort of legislative research. And then we have SSRN and Google Scholar, which are great if you're trying to look for any particular articles from an author or under a specific topic. You can always check either of those for free. As you continue down this list, you can see there's just tons of different ones. Really, all I wanted is for you guys to be able to download this and have this on hand. So if you ever need them, you can get to them. And even if the URLs change over time or they get hosted by a different site, you know more or less where you can start looking to find what you need. But anyways, I digress. Let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you guys is the Legal Information Institute presented by Cornell Law School. So this is an incredible website that has a ton of documents, a whole bunch of stuff that we can use in our legal research. And do you remember how earlier in the lecture when I was talking about what the mission of a specific group of people presenting a website would be? Well, LII tells you up front that they believe that everyone should be able to read and understand the laws that govern them, so they do it and present it for free on this particular website, which is wonderful, and we love to see it. But if you wanted to go a little bit deeper looking into that, you can always go to the About LII page where they talk about who they are, what they do, and how they maintain this website the way that they do. But anyways, the way that I normally get to this website is just by Googling Legal Information Institute or Googling Cornell LII, and it's usually the very first link. We don't really link it on our own, like TTU databases pages, but it's really easy to find if you just Google it. So anyways, let's move on. I want to show you a little bit of what is on the home page. So first off, we can scroll down and we find like original content that LII is making in order to help us understand the laws that we're looking at. Now, you and I as lawyers, we have a little bit more context for these things. These are a little bit easier to understand for us, but a layman does not. And so LII creates some user guides and some explanations for them, which is always very helpful, especially if you are practicing a specific type of law, you get a different kind of case and need to kind of brush up on those terms or those concepts in a way that you can understand quickly and easily. LII is great at that. They also contain a lot of news coming out of the government, a lot of things that are happening in the legislature right now. That's holding on right here on the From the Government page. And then if you continue to scroll down, you can find the legal resources section where you can find all of these primary sources. We can go find the Constitution, the US Code, et cetera, et cetera. And then we can find the original content that they're making for us. So something that I think is really cool is that LII has its own table of popular names of federal statutes, just like we find on Westlaw and Lexis. So we can go into this section and find the popular name of a statute and then go and research that statute. Now, I think that's great specifically for LII because LII is not particularly built for searching. It's built for letting you find exactly what you need, but searching, it's a little iffy. So
If you already know what you're looking for, because you've already found it in the popular names table, or sorry, the table of popular names, then you can go look for the statute without a problem. Otherwise, it might come out under the search bar, it might not. But LII is really built more for browsing than it is for searching. Anyways, so we can look through the original content, we can look through the primary sources, and then they have their stuff categorized also by legal topics, which is wonderful. And then in this Learn About section here, they have a lot of their original content put together with some of the law and legal definitions, so it can help you understand and give you that context when you don't necessarily have it. Now, another thing that I really like that LII can do is that it has a lawyer directory here. And sometimes you'll even get like ads in this space for lawyers in your area, depending on what's, hitting back on your IP address. If you look out for mine, you might see Tijerina Law Firm. We get those a lot here. Anyways, so they have a lawyer directory where you can go and you can look up lawyers for specific kinds of practice areas. And though you are the lawyer, you may not need this. You may need to contact a colleague for whatever reason so that you can maybe get a little bit more context on a new case that came in. Maybe you can send out a referral network, do all those kinds of good things. But mostly, this is here and you can use it to give to your patrons when you don't have access to the things that could help them, et cetera, et cetera. Alternatively, I also like this legal encyclopedia. So this is a creation completely from Legal Information Institute, and you have all of these different areas that you can look through. And you can, like, for instance, in constitutional law, it'll start to give you like the definitions of all these different things, and it will give you more links towards other things that are related, and it will give you some like this one up here. This one will start to give you like other sources to look at where they found this definition and things like that. I think that's great. And then I wanted to specifically point out this under Get the Law. If you go to the US Constitution, they have a copy of the US Constitution, which I mean, we all have memorized by heart at this point, right? That's all we do in law school. Not the point. If you click on this See Explanation button right here where the title is under the Constitution, this is going to take you to the US Constitution annotated. Now, we have access right now with Westlaw and with Lexis to the USCA and the USCS respectively, right? But even though those are great and very, very useful because they get us other secondary sources, other primary law, they lead us to other things that we can actually use to further our research. If we don't have access to those, finding an annotated version of the Constitution or state statutes, I'm sorry, or federal statutes is kind of difficult. It's kind of hard. However, LII has you covered, at least with the Constitution. They have their annotated Constitution, and you can look through all of the table of contents, and it will give you not just what the letter of the law is, but the overview, the historical background, all these other kinds of things, gives you all this context, all these other secondary sources, and I find them incredible. Now, if you're doing something like watching specific Supreme Court cases come to fruition, LII has you covered there too. If you scroll down on the homepage under legal resources, under original content, you can see that they have a Supreme Court bulletin where basically you can sign up for email subscriptions so that you get to stay abreast of all of the things happening in the Supreme Court right now. And that's just very nice. They have a couple other wonderful things that we can look through. And honestly, if I looked through all of them with you, we would be here all day. So I'm just going to say, poke around on this website. It is completely free. It's not going to charge you for anything. Poke around on this website, see what it can do for you, commit it to memory, because it's always going to be a great resource for us. And we're going to need it for the in-class exercise. And now we're going to talk about VLEX Fast Case. Now, in order to get there, we have to log in through our institution. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at Texas Tech School of Law's homepage. So you go up here, and then you go to Electronic Resources. And then you could either look for it alphabetically, or you could just type it in here. I'm just going to look for it alphabetically because I know it's under V for VLEX. So let's go to VLEX Fast Case right here. Every now and then you'll get like a little thing that tells you that it's unavailable, but it's not. Just click the link. And then it should take you and sign you in and we will get to VLEX Fastcase. Now, if you've used Fastcase before this point, because this was like a new development over the past few months, if you've used Fastcase before, you'll notice that it is incredibly different now. Now, Fastcase is, I think, owned by this company called VLEX, who is really focusing on AI integration. So they're trying to use that to kind of help you search for things that you need and give you some relevant information, though it is your choice whether or not you want to use the AI in tandem with VLEX. But basically, the reason that we like to use VLEX is that it has all these really incredible things, just like LII, that we can use for free or with your bar membership. Specifically, Fastcase right now, we have it via our institution, but once you are bar certified, you will get access to VLEX through your bar certification. So, there's a couple things I want to show you on VLEX. The first and most important is this little help button. You click this help button first, and then I want you to go to the knowledge base. This is going to give you basically a user guide on how to use VLEX. Now, I had to play around with this user guide because it's a little new to me too. I'm used to using the old Fastcase. So you open this up and you can get all this information on how to like set up your page, how to start looking for specific documents, how to browse through different things. If you want to get the Chrome extension, you can do that here. Don't look at my cat. You can get the Chrome extension here. You can start playing with the AI here and ask some really important questions about prompt engineering and stuff. But anyways, just know that this is here in case whatever I touch on today is not particularly helpful. But anyways, let's go back to VLEX. Couple of the things I want to show you. First off is the browse function. So let's go to browse and we can either start browsing by jurisdiction or we can start looking for the specific documents that we want. So what I want to do is I want to go to case law, for example. The first thing it's going to do is ask you like which court, whether you want to look via a federal reporter or a state reporter. So let's go by court first. And let's say I want to look at some Texas cases. So I'll scroll all the way down to Texas, and then it'll give me my options. Do I want to look at the Texas Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals, et cetera, et cetera? So VLEX is also like a little bit better suited to searching than like LII was. So let's try and do that real quick. They can do some terms and connector searching, but you can also do some natural language searching on VLEX. So let's say I want to start researching liability. I should probably spell it right. Liability. So it's going to bring up a whole list of results, and I haven't even hit enter yet, but it's going to bring up a whole list of results because it's trying to get you where you need to be as quickly as possible. So it's already giving me an option for a liability waiver, just giving me a search. I can just search the word liability, or it wants me to be more specific. I can start doing some of these suggested searches. And if none of those are helpful, we can even go all the way down to documents. If we're searching for a specific like liability document, we can do that. Like this one, the limited liability company in West Encyclopedia of American Law, or we can even start to look at specific sources. I don't know why I just did that to me, but anyways, we can start looking at specific sources. We can look at like this little book, Liability Insurance Law, and go from there. But anyways, let's just do the search and see what happens. So the first thing it's going to pull up is documents. It's going to sort it by relevance, and then we get our options over here at left to try and narrow down our search further. If we're looking for case law, we can just pull up the little case law button. If we're looking for specifically administrative materials, we can look up the little administrative materials button and start narrowing down our searches from there. We can also browse by jurisdiction and by date or by looking through specific cited authorities. But anyways, it's very similar to the way that Westlaw and Lexis work. It's just a slightly different interface, but it's got a lot of the same like interactivity that Westlaw and Lexis have. Next up, really quick, I want to show you the advanced search function on VLEX. It works very, very similar to Westlaw and Lexis's. This way, you can just create the terms and connectors using the already available form. So you go over here at left and you go to the advanced search button, and then you can already start putting in your information, what exactly you're looking for. So you can select every jurisdiction that you want. You can, oops, I accidentally exited out. You can search specifically which content that you want, if you want case law, constitutions, etc. And then you use the form very similar to the ones on Westlaw and Lexis, where you put in all of these words or this exact phrase, these words in proximity, and it will build the terms and connectors search for you so that you don't have to memorize the entire language of the database, so to speak. You can also immediately start putting in these filters, like putting in the cited authorities, for instance, putting in like a title if you know the title of a form or a document already, or start putting in the date. And if you're using VLEX often, you'll notice that each of their documents has a document ID. And if you write those down, you can even start to use their document ID to find the document that you need again. And like I keep saying, VLEX is free. It's going to be free here at the institution and it's going to be included in your bar membership package. So you can just click around this entire website and just play with it and see what you can find, see what it can do for you. And I really do implore you to do that. Last thing that I want to show you real quick before we move on to the in-class exercise is I want to show you the folders. So I haven't really used VLEX very much, so I haven't saved anything in the folders, but just like Westlaw and just like Lexis, it has an internal capability to create folders of the documents that you really like so that when you're doing research, you can keep everything organized, keep everything put together here on this website. And you don't really have to go any further than that. And actually, I was lying. I'm not done yet. I have a couple more things. So first, I want to point out this Vincent AI button. Let's press it because we don't actually currently have access to the Vincent AI function. This would become something that we would subscribe to monthly as part of our membership, our individual membership when we have like the bar membership system, right? Then we could use Vincent AI to help us keep going on this website, help us do our legal research. But as with any AI, be wary, be careful, and check your sources. You don't want to get disbarred for something stupid like trusting an AI when you really should have just been figuring it out on your own. But anyways, so going back to the homepage, I also wanted to just make a note of this little get started button here. If you open that up, you can also find the knowledge base instead of going over here to the help button. You can find the knowledge base here, or it can give you some guided tours on the website and help you really get a feel for it, or even some video tutorials to help you understand how it's all supposed to work. And this is really helpful because I don't know about you guys, but recently I've been having a little bit of problems with VLEX. I'm not sure, maybe it's my computer, maybe it's my internet, but I'm gonna blame the website. And so using the video tutorials help me figure out what of these troubles that I'm having is the website not doing what it's supposed to, and what was my computer or my internet connection just being a little bit wonky. So that's helpful, not only to learn how to use it, but how to troubleshoot it, learn how to troubleshoot the website. Anyways. And in case you hadn't already noticed, down here we've got personalized news based on the things that you are currently searching for, based on the things that you save. And then we have the latest news, so we can always keep up with news in the law. And that's all of VLEX that I want to show you. I'm going to have you guys do a scavenger hunt on VLEX for the final assessment. But other than that, that's all we're going to play with it for today. Anyways, now let's do the in-class exercise. Okay, so let's get started with the in-class exercise and be done with this lecture for the day. So, your client is Cynthia Shepard, a Lubbock resident. In 2022, Shepard signed a guarantee for a business expansion loan to Genbo Construction, a company owned by her now ex-husband. Cheatham State Bank, a member of the Federal Reserve System, made the loan to Genbo. Now, Genbo has not made a payment to Cheatham since the beginning of 2023. Shepard has been ignoring letters from the bank because she does not want to bail out her ex-husband's company. And now, Cheatham has hired a debt collection agency whose representative is calling Shepard in the early evening. After repeatedly telling the representative that she does not want him to call her, Shepard started hanging up on him. Today, however, the representative called Shepard's employer. Extremely agitated, Shepard has called you for help. She insists there must be a law prohibiting the debt collection agency's actions. So now we're going to research the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, the FDCPA. It's kind of hard for me to say the acronym. This is a federal law, and we want to see if it applies to Shepard's problem. Now, the only website that we're going to use is the Legal Information Institute. And the first thing that we want to do is find the title number and the section numbers in the United States Code for the FDCPA. So we're going to do just like we did in the demo, and we're going to go down from the home page. Here's the LII homepage, and we're going to go down to the table of popular names because I don't have a citation, and that's kind of the only way you can search for things on LII. So we're going to start here on the table of popular names. We go to F, and I just really like that here it's got some information about how popular names are acquired and how the US code is put together and why we use the popular names and how this specific popular names table works. All of this is really helpful to keep in mind. But anyways, so I'm just going to scroll down until I find it. The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. There we go. And it said it there right before I had clicked into it, but it'll say it again here. It gives us the immediate information that we need, like the original public law number, the added public law number, the statutes at large citation, and the US code citation. So that is our answer for number one, this 15 USC 1601. That is where the short title kind of begins in the US code. Like that's where it says, okay, this is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. This is what we're going to do with it. This is where it goes in the code section. But I want you to see this table here below that because LII has done an excellent job of translating the public law section from the original public law document into the USC section and giving us note of what title it's under. Sometimes acts, when they are getting codified into the US code, get chopped up and moved around and put here and put there and whatever, just put all over the place, depending on where it should be in the US Code's categorization system. So I love this table because it tells us exactly where these things are going to be, whether it's been chopped up or not. So what I'm going to do really quick is I just want to note that we can scroll this far down. And since it's all in numerical order, we can go see where every single section is put in the US code. Like, look here, look here. We can see that section 601 of the public law was put into 1601 into 15 USC 1601, whereas 602 was put into 15 USC 1681. I just think that's nifty, and it's nifty that we have this table so that we know like exactly where specific provisions are if we know exactly what provision we're looking for from the public law. But I want to keep scrolling down because I'm curious to see more or less how far these go. Like I'm seeing 1692. That's like the highest number in the US code that we've seen so far, or 1693. So we know that we're going to find information from the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act all the way from 15 USC 1601 to 15 USC 1693. Now let's keep that in mind as we do number two. So number two, to what kinds of debt does the FDCPA apply? And will the FDCPA apply in Shepard's situation? We want to find the subsection of the FDCPA that supports that answer. So we have this beautiful table, but we really have no way to know what's in each section unless we go looking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by clicking on this very first code section. This is where it all begins in the USC, right? And I could read through all of this, but what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to go backwards within that telescope And I want to see what other things we've got. So we know usually like the definitions, scope, purpose, all those kinds of things are usually put up at the very beginning of an act and usually at the very beginning of a section on the US Code. So I just wanted to go back in the telescope and see if there would be anything that could give us some more information on whether or not this would apply to Shepard's situation, what kinds of debt are included, what kinds are excluded. So now that I have like this first part of the table of contents, I have the findings and declaration of purpose. That might give us an idea. So might the definitions and rules of construction. And then right after that, I see exempted transactions, which is also helpful. Telling us what it's not helps us find out what it is, right? So the way that I really wanted you guys to answer that second question is really with all three of those code sections, because you have to read these three in order to gain a good idea, good understanding of what is included in this bill, in this act, and what isn't included in this act. So if you were to go through and read all of these little bits right here, and then go back again, look through the definitions and the rules of construction. And this is a long one, I understand. But still, if you were to look through all of these, it would start to give you an idea of what is covered and what isn't covered, especially when we get back over here and find the exempted transactions section. Another big one, but still gives you an idea of what is and what isn't there. So that's the answer to number two. And now I want you to go even further back and browse the table of contents to find which US Code section places limits on the behavior of a debt collector. So we remember just a second ago when we were looking at the whole thing, it said it went from 1601 to about 1693 or so. And here we can only see a table until 1616. So let's go a little bit further back and see how far we go. So we can see that part A is 1601 to 1616, part B is 1631 to 1651, et cetera, but it doesn't make it all the way down the list. So let's go even further back, all the way up to chapter 41 and see what we've got. We've got stuff from 1601 all the way to 1693R, and we know we have provisions from the act that we're looking up in basically every single one of these sections. We saw that in the table, right? So now that I'm here, I want to see if there is any limits on the behavior of the debt collector, right? Now, immediately I see this one, debt collection practices. So I'm going to click in here and see if there is anything that might give me an idea of what is and isn't okay for debt collectors to do. And it looks like there's a lot of things. It looks like here the acquisition of location information, the communication in connection with debt collection, laws on harassment or abuse, false or misleading representation, unfair practices. All of these seem like they'd be a good place to start to look into what is and isn't okay for a debt collector to do. Right now, we are in 15 USC chapter 41, subchapter 5, and we're looking under the debt collection practices. So all of these, or any of these, I would implore you to look through to figure out exactly which ones would talk about the constant calling of a uh, of an indebted person. So I'm thinking it would be either in communication or in harassment. So let's go take a look at those really quick. So we look at this, and what I would do at this point is maybe look for the word call, see if that's available anywhere, see if that tells me anything. And no, I'm just getting hits on my ads over here. But I did see that there is a section for ceasing communication. So that might be something to look into. Otherwise, we can go into harassment or abuse and start looking for these. Maybe see if call is also a thing. See, like here we see a section that says causing a telephone to ring or engaging any person in telephone conversation repeatedly with intent to annoy. That would be not great. It would be not good. As it says so up here, the debt collector may not engage in this kind of conduct. So Basically, on Legal Information Institute, you have to do a little bit of extra digging than you would on Westlaw or Lexis, but in doing so, you also get a lot of extra context, which is great. You get to kind of understand a little bit more about how the code is put together, and then on top of that, it gives you some editorial notes in case you need them. But anyways, that's about it for the in-class exercise. Not a big one, not a long one. And let's just do a real quick outro and we can be done with today's lecture.
Do you got questions? Do you got comments? Do you got concerns? Or do you just want to show me a cool rock that you found this summer? With any of these inquiries, you can email me at fj.inojosa@ttu.edu. And with that, today's lecture is done. Y'all can find the handout and the final assignment on the Blackboard page. Now, good luck with everything in your near and far futures. Be good, be safe, and have a great rest of your days.